Morning and good afternoon, everybody, depending upon your time zone. And Randy, thank you for the early welcome. I'm David Breslauer, and I'm joined by my colleague, Randy Simpson. And this is the fourth of our Talk to Our Expert series. And today we're going to talk about the power of permissions in Merlin. These are the ground rules for the webinar. We'd like to keep this kind of short and sweet. I am recording this session, and we will make that available to you later this week. I'm going to do my short presentation. If you have questions, whether they're specific to this topic of today's webinar, or if you have other questions you'd like to ask, please do so in the webinar question area. Randy will try and monitor that because I have a tendency to not look at that while I'm looking at other parts of my screen. So please feel free to ask questions. And as I said, they don't have to be related to today's topic. And again, we're going to try and keep this to about 30 minutes. So today's topic is about permissions in Merlin. And so permissions basically allow you to control what you see in Merlin, and also what you may do with what you are allowed to see in Merlin. So you can see that there are different levels where you might talk about permissions. And the first thing we're going to talk about is what you can see in Merlin. This is based on user groups. And so with user groups, it's possible to filter content. And so this means that multiple groups within an organization can see different content based on metadata tagging, okay? And that metadata tagging could actually be words or descriptions in fields, or it could be as simple as a checkbox that allows you to share content beyond your group, and either one of those things will work. And we'll show you that as we dive in, but I want to go through some basic things first. So here's some examples. One of our customers actually has over 80 chapters around the world, and each of those chapters think they have their own area within their digital asset management system. So they think there are 80 different separate little DAM systems, but it's not. It's a single DAM system, and they keep their content private unless they check a box which shares the content with a wider audience. And so it's a real easy thing to do, to either check the box at the time of upload, or to go back after the fact and decide, yes, this is a pretty nice picture, lots of people would like to have it, and so we're going to check this box that allows us to share it with other users within the organization. For other organizations, a best practice for them is to not use content that's more than, say, 5 years old, and this is true for several of our nonprofits, that they don't want to use content that's more than 5 years old. It's kind of like keeping unripe fruit around, I guess, and so they want to get rid of the old stuff, but they may want to keep it for historical purposes, but not let users accidentally stumble across it and use an older picture. And so this, quote, old content can be either hidden from casual users, or when it hits the expiry date, it can be purged from the system entirely so that it just totally disappears from view. And again, that's a configuration. And these types of configurations that I've described so far, our customer service department can help you set these things up, because these are things that are typically done on the server, and there's not a way for an end user to create these types of, we'll call them filters. Another kind of an old school way of segregating content for Merlin sites is we have several newspaper customers where multiple newspapers may share a common Merlin system, but they don't see each other's content unless there have been some sharing rules set up for it. So those are some different ways that you can filter what you are allowed to view in Merlin. So this is strictly, can I see it, or am I not allowed to see it type of rule. The other type of permissions that we want to talk about today, this is the things that allow you to manage the content that you are entitled to see. And with these controls, you can give people more or less access to what they are allowed to see. And so I want to talk about these because these are things that you can actually control. So These type of permissions would include basic user permissions. So when I log in as a user, I'm allowed to have access to editing tools, or I'm allowed to have access to all of the download tools, or I'm allowed to have access to check boxes like approve content or things like that. And those are all user permissions that are based on your group membership. And most of you are probably familiar with this because you probably know that everybody in Merlin must belong to at least one user group. Otherwise, you're not allowed to log into Merlin. And you may belong to multiple groups, and each of these groups can give you cumulative permissions. You can also have access to specific tools. And so again, based on features that you enable as an admin user, you can turn on or off specific tools within the application. For example, you may give someone permission to have access to the download button, but you may not give them permission to actually download. You may only give them permission to email content or email a contact sheet, or you may want to disable our social media features for some users. And so that's, again, that's real easy to do, and I'm going to show you how to do that. The other thing you can manage are edit permissions. And so again, you can control what people are allowed to edit. So at a higher level, a user may have permission to edit something, to edit metadata on an object, but there may be certain items that you've locked down that you don't want them to be able to edit the metadata on those particular objects. And that's real easy to do as well. I'm going to show you that. And similarly with downloading. So you can control what people are allowed to download. So while a user may have download privileges overall, there may be certain content that you want to restrict. And so I'll show you that. Okay, so let's do the fun part, because this is the part I like to do the most. And let's go take a look. So I'm going to get rid of that, and we're going to launch my Safari browser. Okay, and please don't be shocked. What you're looking at right now is the latest version of Merlin X, our web browser interface, and a new web theme for Merlin X. We call this the Merlin Pro theme. And for some of you that have used our Rich client, you'll notice that it's very similar to our Rich client in look and feel. And that's because we had many requests for this, and so this is something that will be available later this year in one of the upcoming releases. The other theme that we've developed, and I'm going to change my theme briefly, is we've developed a theme. It's called High Contrast. Now, it's not the prettiest of themes, but it's got a special use case, and it's really designed to maximize the contrast between the displayed text and the background of the screen. And this is designed specifically for people that have some sight impairments, and so that's what this is designed for. So I wanted to show you that. And now I'm going to go change it back to a theme that most of you have probably seen before. It's the Aristo theme. So this is the lighter theme, and so I wanted to show you that. The other thing I wanted you to notice is the new banner that I've done across here, because I like this neutral banner rather than the blue banner. And so again, this is something that our customer service department can set up for you if you like, and the banner can be different for different groups within your organization. So different departments that log into Merlin, if you're managing the departments by groups, they can have a banner that reflects their department up here at the top, and so that's something that we've set up here, and I wanted to show that to you. I do have one feature I want to show you before we move on to the permissions thing, just as a little treat, and it's a feature that's coming to you very soon. Notice when I click this particular item, I have an icon, a new icon in my metadata palette. It's right here. It's turned red. Notice it's not red for this one. It is red for this one. It's my commenting icon, and so it allows you to actually go in and add comments. And so you can see where I added the first comment and said it's a nice barn photo. And Randy, of course, being the photo editor, asked me if I could make it a vertical. And I reminded her that only if I crop the text on the barn itself. And commenting is available for both individual items, and commenting is also available for collections. So if you want to comment about a collection of photos, you can do that as well. So that's something that we're currently working on and will be in a release later this summer. Okay, let's talk specifically about basic user permissions. And so as an admin user, I'm going to go into my admin screen, and we're going to take a look at my user groups. This is probably something most of you are familiar with if you've done any admin work at all. So I'm going to wait for this to populate. It takes it a moment or two. And I'm going to choose the group Demo2, for example. So this is one of my user groups. And you can see that if I'm a member of this user group, this is all the stuff I am allowed to do. So I can access my approval checkbox. I can change the display theme. So if you don't want people to be able to change the theme, you can turn off this privilege. I find it to be pretty harmless, but you could turn this privilege off, and if I'm a member of this group, I would not be able to change themes. Allowing users to change their own password, and of course this only works if you are using our local authentication. If you're using system-wide authentication like Active Directory or SAML, this does not apply. This is just for people that you're managing in the users that are down here in the lower left-hand corner if you're managing users locally to your Merlin system. I'm not going to go over each and every one of these things, but I wanted to show you, remind you that this is where you control the base level permissions for each of your user groups. And remember that it's cumulative. So if I belong to two groups and group 1 is allowed to do X, Y, Z, and group 2 is allowed to do A, B, C, and if you belong to both of those groups, then you can do a combination of A, B, C, and X, Y, Z. But one of the other reasons I wanted to bring you into the individual user group. Yes, Randy.
David, there was a question about how you got to the admin screen originally.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, well, I'll go back and do that. So in my cog tool in the upper left-hand corner, if you have admin privileges, administration will appear in that menu. Okay? So just all you have to do is choose administration, and it will take you straight away to this screen, and then you can choose the admin function that you want to manage. Okay? And we're specifically talking about user groups. And the thing I wanted to talk about this user group at the very, very beginning of our conversation, we talked specifically about a filter on what you can see. And again, our customer service department needs to set these up for you. But you can see I've got this filter here that basically says I'm only allowed to see content that has the string demo2 in the field that we refer to as cservice 13. Okay, so if I log in and I'm a member of the Demo2 group, I only see a content that's been assigned to the user Demo2. Okay, so that's that, and you need our help to help with that, to get that set up. Now I want to show you something else. So we're going to kind of get into being able to other permissions that we talked about. So let's say I've got this picture and I want to download this picture, so I can go to my download button and I can say I'd like to download this, and I'm going to download it. And hey, your request has been queued for download, and you're going to see this picture pop open in Photoshop in a few seconds. Okay, it's a rather large JPEG, so it may take it a moment or two. In the meantime, let's go pick another photo. Let's go pick one of these golfing photos. Okay, so I'm going to choose this one, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to say, yep, I'd like to download this, and I'm going to click download. But notice I get a message that says, I'm not allowed to download this. Please contact our archivist in the library at extension 1234 for assistance. So you can see I can download some things and not download other things. All right? And so here's that other photo popping open in Photoshop, and I'm going to just close that because we don't need to see it. So I'm going to show you how we can manage this type of thing, but I want to show you one other thing before I go away. Just like I was not able to download a picture, if I have editing privileges, and I do, I have editing privileges, my pencil tool is available, I can turn editing on, and I can try and add a keyword. Okay, so I'm going to try and add golf as a keyword, but when I click off and it tries to save the record, oh, it was supposed to give me an error message, and it didn't. So obviously I didn't set something up quite right, but I'll show you how that setup is done. It should have said, hey, you're not allowed to edit that. So I'm going to go check on that. But let's go talk about how I set that up. So again, I'm going back to my admin area, and I've got a special admin thing called filters. Now notice the filters has a lock icon next to it instead of just the wrench. And that means that some users may not see the items filters and features and advanced preferences because they are not a high enough level of admin user. So if you think you should see that, you should contact your admin or contact us and we can help you set that up. But I want to show you how I prevented that download. So I added a filter, and I've got either a download filter or an edit filter, and basically it says, hey, if I'm the user, okay, I'm only allowed to download things where my name appears in the byline field. So I am not allowed to download anything unless my name appears in the byline field. And this can be done by either an individual user or you can do it by a group. So you can see if I belong to the group Demo 7, I'm only allowed to download content if the rights checkbox has been set to true. So these are SQL statements, and so if you're familiar with database statements, you can probably figure out how to do this. There are some examples in the manual, and if you need help with this, our customer service department is happy to either set this up for you or walk you through setting up a few of these. And it's really kind of nice because if you forget to do something, if you don't do the syntax properly, let's see, let me get rid of that. I don't want to. I'm trying to get rid of that. And if I try and do this, it's telling me, hey, I didn't do a valid SQL query. Something is wrong. And it actually, in this case, it knows what's wrong. I've got unmatched quotes for a query string. So if I go back and put a quote mark next to it and do a count, it goes, oh, yeah, that's right. And so you can run a count on each one of these. And it's telling you that, hey, there are 889 items, 889 items that David Breslauer is allowed to download. But there are 400,000 items that Demo 7 is allowed to download. And if and again, I'm allowed to edit. So this is the same type of thing, but instead of for downloading, it's for editing. So again, you can control what you are allowed to download and what you are allowed to edit. And then this is where you put the information that shows up when you try and download something and you don't have permission to do it. Okay.
David,
Yeah.
There was a question that if a site is using Active Directory, can they set up a separate user group for authenticating users that aren't part of their Active Directory so they can have these restrictions?
Well, they could, but even if they're part of the Active Directory, these restrictions would still apply.
Right. No. The question, the context is that to set up limited access for outside users.
So you could, yes, you could set it up limited access for outside users.
Yes.
Yes. So
that would be direct authentication. Yeah.
That's right. So you basically down here in the user, so even if you are using Active Directory for most of your users, you can add a local user down here by going to the users area of the admin screen and enter in a username and password. And here's a new feature. You can set the password to expire, so you can give user access for a couple of days or a couple of months or whatever you want to do, and then it expires, and you would make them a member of one of the groups. So you can see, I'm going to use myself as the example here. Here, this is me, and I belong to these groups. Okay, so I hope that answered the question. Okay, so another way to control how users interact with Merlin is to remove palettes and tools from Merlin. And so what I want to do right now is I'm going to show you how you set that up, and then I'm going to show you what the results are. So I'm going to go back to administration. And so I've got, again, another super admin feature called Features. And you can actually go in and disable entire parts of what you're allowed to see. So for example, if you don't want people to be able, so you can see I've got all of these different bits and pieces that are plugins to the entire Merlin application. And so for example, if you wanted to take away the list view from a user, you could. Or if you wanted to remove tracks because you're not using tracks, and normally we do this for you, you can disable tracks. Or if you want to disable emailing of content and you want to disable the email results or contact sheet, and you want to disable Twitter and YouTube but leave Facebook, you can disable each one of these things okay, but still leave them download permissions for general downloads and Facebook, so they can still have these things. And so I can disable each one of these little plugin areas, including running reports or accessing different parts of the admin screen. So you might create someone who's like, you've got a super admin and regular admin, and then you might create like a lower level admin and give them permission just to add new users, for example, and not do anything else in the admin area. And so that's a real easy thing to set up here. And again, it can be done by all of the different groups that you might want to have set up in your Merlin system. Okay, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay, I'm going to log out, and I'm going to log in as a different type of user. And what I want you to notice, when I'm logged in as this user, 1, I get the old banner, okay? 2, I have smaller thumbnails. 3, notice my toolbar. I have a lot of tools that have been disabled. They're just not available to me, okay? So I don't have access to my edit tool, for example, and I don't have access to my linking tool. I do have access to download, but when I click on it, in this case I do have access to everything, but you could disable some of these things as well. So that, I wanted to show you how that works. It's pretty cool, and it is a reduced feature set. So there you have it, lots of different ways to control what your users can see with filters associated with their groups, and you can also control what they can do by giving them their own set of tools. So if you wanted to create a slimmed down version of Merlin with only certain features, you can easily do that. So, time for your questions.
David, there was a question about setting, can a user be set up to change their password every month? If they're on Active Directory, that's a rule. What about
if they're on Active Directory? Of course, Active Directory or your SAML authentication would manage that. Currently, the local authentication in Merlin is not set up to require that a user change their password every 3 months. That is something we're looking at including, but we're not doing it yet. Yes, I'm going through the questions as well. So I think we've answered everything so far. Oh, and Jan noticed the crop function. Yes. So and it's pretty cool. So since you're here, why don't I show it to you real fast? Let me log back in as a user that is allowed to crop. So in addition to talking about what I wanted to tell you about today, you're getting a little preview of some cool things that are coming. So if I click on this particular photo and I click the crop tool, it opens up in a new window, and here's my crop tool. So if I wanted to adjust this picture, I can do that, and I can crop it any way I want. And you can see I've got some predefined aspect ratios. So if you know you're looking for a 16:9, you can do that. And so here's a 16:9 window. So you can set it to be 16:9. So there's that. And again, you can change the resolution. So if you know you want the resolution higher, you can choose to resample the file. And you can also tell Merlin to create a new version of this. And so what it will do is it will create a new version, and it's a true version over the old version, but you can still go back and recrop it. I'm just going to click Save. And there it is working in the background. And of course, since it's trying to create a new version, and so there's our crop on this. So it's showing me that there's a crop. It's displaying a little funny. So you can see some of this is still a little bit of a work in progress. So, but that's our crop tool.
David, there's a question from Melissa about in the past.
Okay.
If a collection was made by a user group A, then only other users are in group A can see that. Is that still true?
Oh, that's a great question. So let me show you what's coming soon. In fact, really soon. So let me show you. I'm going to go to collections, and that is the default behavior, Melissa. You have to belong. If you're in group A and someone else is in group B, and you create a collection, only you can see it. That's the typical default behavior. But it can also be set up that, you know, if you're in group A and the other person is in group A and B, then both of you would be able to see the collections. But there's something new that we've added. So let me show you this. So I've got this collection called Best Jets. And notice here's my commenting on this particular collection. And if I go down to my featured content and I go to my demo items, notice my demo items collection, the comments turn red. So again, I can add comments to a collection as well. But in this case, if I go to my collection tool, I can actually change the group membership. So you can see that in this particular case, all the members of all of these groups are allowed to see this particular collection. Okay, but if I go to a different collection, it might be that it's a smaller level of users, and so you can control what users can see these collections. So if you wanted to remove collections or add collections or remove groups or add groups to share across a collection, you'll be able to do that very soon, and you don't need our help to do that. In the past, it's something we've been able to do in the background, but it was kind of a pain. And now we've given you an interface to do it yourself. Okay, let's see. Also, does item version history include full version history in the metadata about that item? Brad, I'm not totally sure I understand the question, but Merlin does keep track of all outputs, and that would be part of the item's history, and you would be able to go back in time and see previous versions as well.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes, it is common to ingest your own release candidates into Merlin for approval, and that's exactly right. And so, and the approval process is not fully wired into this version of Merlin, but there are some approvals, and in some case, an approval is a simple matter of ticking a box. For example, this checkbox right here might be something that sets something to mark it as an approved status, and that change in status might send emails to certain individuals if you've configured that in our workflow engine. So that's what that's all about.
There was a question about linking an individual photo to a story. Yes.
Okay, so
yep, you can do that manually. You can show how you can do that manually, right?
Yep, it can be done manually or automatically. So, for example, it can be done automatically based on metadata. So, if there's a certain piece of metadata that's common to both the story and to the photo or graphic, we can automatically link those items together based on rules. But you can also just go in and click two items. So, for notice, I just clicked these 3 golf photos. Okay, they're not next to each other. They could, in this case, they're only a few records away from each other, but they could be hundreds or thousands of records away from each other, and you'd be able to select them, and using the linking tool, you'd be able to say, hey, I'd like to link these guys, if you have permission to do that, of course. Notice they each have a little chain link icon on them, and so if you find one and say, hey, show me what it's linked to, it's going to show you the other 2 golf photos. So that's a little bit about linking. Okay. Let's see. Can we set our own banner? Yes. Well, we can set it for you.
Yeah. There's a question: is updates to Merlin X happen automatically, or do they need to be arranged per site? For example, like when's the ETA on cropping? We let you know when before we do an upgrade. We do notify you. What's the ETA on cropping, Dave? You might know that better than I do.
That's supposed to be in the 5.3 release, and it's supposed to go to QA later this summer. I think they're talking about rolling out the cropping probably around the end of July.
Brad, I'm wondering, Brad, if we want to set up a separate sort of a tour to answer all your workflow questions. If you're available for that, David and I would be happy to do that. You're asking, see, tracking approvals, how the whole approval workflow would work. might be easier.
And Melissa
we're coming
asked
up
if
on the half hour.
Yep. So we're happy to do that, and we'll go through the questions and answer them and send out an email so everybody can benefit from the questions and the answers. But Melissa did ask if user group A can edit metadata and user group B cannot edit metadata. If a user is in both groups, can they edit metadata or no? The answer is yes, they can, because remember, I said it was cumulative. So if I can do A in one group and not A in the other group, but I belong to both groups, then I'm given permission. So that is cumulative.
Okay, I think
that's our 30 minutes. I guess
yeah,
that's a wrap.
I think you got through the questions as well. But as always, if you have additional questions, if things come up, you can always send an email to David or me, and we're happy to answer any of the questions.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Happy Wednesday.